a very un-Leinster-like performance. I think it all even started from the very first kick-off of the game, and there was a breakdown in communication between Dev Toner and Jack Conan offside, and it just escalated from there, and you could see the cheering from the sideline, from the Saracens bench and support staff just got louder and louder, and the energy they generated, combined with that with some really excellent play and some really, really clever play by the Saracens, targeting the scrum, targeting the breakdown, and every decision went their way.
Almost, I guess, the perfect game plan from Saracens too. To come here, they've been waiting in the long grass, waiting for months for this fixture to come around, because all their focus went off the field. They know they're going into the championship for next season. They know the players are going to leave the club. They've been talking about the contracts. There was the Owen Farrell situation, but all their focus was about coming to Dublin and getting this victory. They've been planning this game for quite some time.
Absolutely. Look, as I said, once the announcement was made, effectively the Gallagher Premiership, their season was over. So they were able to rotate. They were able to, rest players. And just have an absolute focus on this game, because it was the only game that was meaningful in the last 8 months. It meant a lot to them today. You could see from the first whistle, the likes of Brad Barrett, who's been a stalwart for them, with Richard Wigglesworth. There was just that collective mindset of us against the world, really, and you could just see that. And as I said, as the game of the first half went on, they just grew and grew more confidence, and absolutely dictated the first half in particular.
Well, they had 8 starters that would have played against Leinster and Newcastle last season in the final in May. So plenty of change, plenty of injuries, lots of youths on the bench for Saracens today. But still those players with the experience, the Vunipolas, you mentioned Barrett, guys who've got 100, 200 appearances for Saracens. They still had that experience to put in that performance they showed in the first half.
Absolutely, and it was kind of strange. We knew the kind of game plan that Saracens would bring, very much focused on set piece, almost just waiting for the opposition to just trying to suffocate them, waiting for the opposition to make mistakes and just feed off that. And you could see that. That's what they did. And as I said, Brad Barrett retiring this, he got an extension to the season because it was elongated, but he was just phenomenal. We knew it was coming, just running down Sexton's channel all day, and he just did it fantastically well. And then Wigglesworth, who also is leaving at the end of the season, his box kicks were on the money every single time. And Lewington and Maitland were putting pressure on the Leinster back three, on Lama as well at fullback, and they were just getting all the 50-50 balls in the first half.
Explain to me what went wrong with the Leinster scrum in the first half, because in the first half hour alone they gave away 3 penalties on scrums, and Saracens seemed to turn them over, put them on pressure throughout that first half at scrum time. What went wrong?
Yeah, I think there was looking at it, Vincent Koch, the South African, he came off the bench last year in the final and made a big impression, starting today, and he really targeted Cian Healy, and some of Cian Healy's positions there on impact, he was just turning him in, and there's only going to be one winner then, because he's such a powerful man. And then you've got Jamie George alongside him, and obviously Vunipola as well, up against Porter, who was getting a bit of short change there as well. So it was technically all around a fantastic effort by the 8, and you could see even from the very first scrum, and there wasn't any penalties, Saracens put in, the ball was at the back of Vunipola, and they waited and they waited, and they were just looking for that second surge, and they were, even though they weren't going to get a penalty there, they were almost saying to Leinster, we're coming at you in the future scrums. And I think it was 6 or 7 penalty scrums at the end of it, 5 or 6 in the first half, and really, really importantly in the last 10 minutes of the game, when Leinster were looking to try, and obviously there were only 5 points difference, there was 2 crucial scrum penalties again. So the Saracens went back to the basics, and again it proved to be Leinster's Achilles heel.
To Sarri's great credit too, when Jordan Larmour goes over for that try, I think 62 minutes are gone, it's back to 5 points. The momentum appears to have entirely switched back over towards the Pro 14 champions, but Saracens had it within them to stop that Leinster machine scoring any more after that.
Absolutely, and really, really clever game management. They just kind of slowed the ball down. You could see every penalty they got, if they were kicking for a line out, they just composed themselves, just took a bit of time away, maybe condensed their game plan even more, and just went left, right, keeping the ball in field. Maitland and Lewington, they weren't getting the ball out wide, they were just chasing down kicks, and they did it very well. And as we said, when you had the likes of Good and Daly kicking balls from the halfway line, they were just a phenomenal threat throughout the whole course of the game.
When Owen Farrell comes back from suspension, he'll retake the set pieces. But Elliot Daly has shown what he can do. That's a cannon of a left boot he has.
Absolutely. I mean, his technique, there were almost sand wedges going down and this was from the halfway line. He was keeping the ball really clever, because there was a bit of a swirling wind out there. but he was kicking the ball, keeping a low trajectory. But he had another kind of 10 metres on a couple of kicks, which was just incredible.
Leinster's changes at half-time seemed to work quite well. Ryan Baird particularly came in, he got in among it, he stripped the ball away a couple of times, he carried quite a bit of ball. Probably an argument he maybe could have started the game with the way he played off the bench at half-time.
Yeah, he really does. I've been so impressed with him this year. He really looks the real deal, and in a couple of his carries, he really got over the gain line a few occasions. I think has a bit to learn still. Sometimes runs a bit upright, and on one occasion, importantly, got held up by a Toji, I think in Bunapolo, and held him up and kind of got a turnover. But his all-round contribution was immense, and I think he's obviously one for the future, and he's one for the present as well. But interestingly, they took the decision to take Dev and Sean Cronin off, I think after 41 minutes, and Kelleher came on as well. But I was impressed with the Leinster replacements today when they came on. They all kind of made a difference in attack, and Josh van der Fleer came on as well and made an impression. And was probably saying I should have started the game.
There will be those arguments. Will Connors and Sean Cronin particularly start this game ahead of Kelleher and van der Fleer. Kind of hard to know when Leinster played so badly in the first half in a general sense whether that was down to Will Connors and Sean Cronin though.
Yeah, it absolutely wasn't down to those two. I think collectively they were just shell shocked. I mean, if you're looking at some standout players today, I think Caelan Doris again was fantastic in the loose, and he's such a big man. He's got just fantastic feet, always looking to evade the first tackler. He was probably one of the few kind of high points from a Leicester point of view today.
How much will this feel like a huge missed opportunity for them though? Because given their seeding in the Pro 14 and the Champions Cup, and with the pandemic, they could have played in the Aviva Stadium 6 weekends in a row and potentially won a double. This was probably as nicely set up to win a competition as they ever could have been. Yeah,
this is really going to hurt them, I think. As we said, they were invincible in the Pro 14, and they won it out of canter if we're honest. And the level of Leinster with all the competition, you could almost say that Leinster's B team would go very far in the league to even winning it, which is frightening thought. So the arguments could be said that they were a bit undercaked for this outing against Saracens, when there was going to be a couple of levels up in standards, and maybe they weren't ready for that, and they looked, as I said, you could see when they're coming off that obviously there's no crowd here, so you can really kind of hear the communications on the pitch, and you could just hear that the Saracens players communicating, just talking louder. And as the first half went on, Leinster just got so quiet and in their shells, and thankfully for them, they picked it up in the second half after probably a good telling off at half time by Cullen and Lancaster, because they definitely upped it in the second half, and they can take some positives from there. But overall, this one's going to really hurt, especially given the fact that it's the same opposition, Saracens, who put an end to their winning streak.
Well, I can imagine there's going to be debates about the Pro 14 in the Sunday papers and in the Monday papers and the quality and everything else. I do wonder, because it comes off a small preparation window because of the amount of games that they had to play afterwards to get to the final, and then really the only game where they were tested all that hard before the Pro 14 final was the resumption match against Munster, where Munster gave them a right good run here, but their second team played against Ulster. Ulster died off in the second half of the Pro 14 final. You could argue that Leinster haven't been that hardly tested really since the restart, other than that Munster game.
Yeah, absolutely, and they haven't had to be. As you said, it's the Pro 14, they've cantered to victories, and it's that those couple of levels up that Saracens kind of gave them today, that was international level, and they were under Kate, it seems. But look, they'll obviously regroup. They've got it's not long now to the season begins again, but I think Leinster will. This one, as I said, this one will really hurt them, because they did fantastically well in the Pro 14, but Europe is really the highest benchmark for professional teams this side of the hemisphere, and this one's going to be a tough one to swallow.
As for Sarries, like I called it in the radio earlier, their last dance, a bit like the Chicago Bulls, where they know what's coming. They know that some of their players are going to leave. They know they're dropping down to the Championship, but this is the last time with this group where potentially they could win 4 European Cups in 5 seasons if they were to go all the way. They won't be in any way awed about the idea of taking on French opposition next weekend.
No, absolutely not. And look, I underestimated them in the pre-match kind of predictions. I had Leinster by 10, and it shows how much I know. But it was just on the basis of what we'd seen and the complete upheaval that Saracens, the club, have gone through. As we said, I think 15 players have left, 8 of them on loan. So it was a massive ask for them today. But some of the guys stepped up to the plate massively, and as we said, like Brad Barrett was just phenomenal today for a guy who's retiring. He's been doing it year in, year out. just unbelievable performance by him.
And I do wonder if this is focused the mind for Saracens too, because I was reading Maro Itagi's interview yesterday ahead of coming to Dublin, and he said he kind of fancies maybe going to France next year. He's going to give it 1 year in the Championship to try and get Saracens back up, but he said this is my last shot probably at the club to win Europe again. Yeah. And as a result, I'm going to give everything I can for the next 3 weekends.
Yeah, and collectively you could see that. As I said before the game, they were out on the pitch an hour and a half before kick-off, in a massive huddle, which was unusual to see from an away team that early on the pitch. And you could just see there was something in the air perhaps for them today. It meant so much to them. As we said, it's the only game that's mattered in their heads, and they loved that kind of mentality of us against the world. And as we said, they're probably the most disliked team in Europe, and after all the salary cap breaches, even more so. And that they probably feed off that, and they've probably been feeding off that for the last few months. As you said, waiting in the grass, in the long grass for Leinster, because it's the one game that they have been targeting since the game was announced 8 months ago.
And a final word on Leinster, who I'm sure are probably going to feel a bit hard done by in the second half. Robbie Henshaw takes a knock, has to go off to get his head inspected. He doesn't come back out. Johnny Sexton gets hit a little bit late. Just in terms of that incident, because I'm sure it's going to be a talking point, our instant reaction here in the press box was penalty no more. It was a tackle that kind of hit a little bit late, but it was an attempt at a tackle, and I don't think there was any intention there to try and hurt Johnny Sexton, was there?
No, absolutely. I don't think so. It was, and when you watch it in real time, which is where you really should be looking at these, the hit was on the shoulder, and then near the end, as he was falling, the arm kind of went into around the neck area, but there was no kind of impact on that. And I think that was that was during a massive phase in play. I think it was almost 30 phases, and it was a real kind of turning point. As I said, I think it was the right decision. Sexton was kind of down on the ground for a good 4 or 5 phases. Obviously was angry at the decision, but I think it was a fair one, and I think it was Rhodes who got man of the match in the end, who was again phenomenal throughout.
And just a very final word on the fact it's been empty here all day. I do wonder if that made much of an influence, given that we could hear the Sarries bench underneath us explode every time they got a decision, particularly a penalty, which I would imagine if there'd been 40-odd thousand people in blue as supporters here today, they would have been criticising the officials on every single decision and getting on the referees' back. But instead, Saracens were able to feed from the energy of their own players jumping off the bench in an empty stadium.
Absolutely, and I think we've seen since lockdown that as home crowds, when they are there, they do make a big impact, and it does have an impact on referees. And if they say it doesn't, then they're probably lying. And as you said, an empty stadium, we could hear it was my first game at it since the lockdown, being live at an event, and it's just very, very eerie and a really strange atmosphere. And you're trying to generate your own buzz from within your kind of backroom staff, and you're within your own camp. And as you said, the Saracens boys were fired up for this one, and it really did tell.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a leveller. Sarries go on to the semi-finals of the competition next weekend. They'll play either Racing or Clermont-Auvergne. For Leinster, the dreams of a double are over. Their winning run comes to an end after 25 games. Michael, thanks a million for joining us this afternoon to watch the game here at the empty Aviva.
Thanks very much, Phil. Cheers.